Alright everyone, you've heard of deep fake images and things of that nature, but what about for voice? What about for audio? What if you could seamlessly replicate the voice of a CEO or another major figure, and using just a little bit of technology you could make it look like they were calling from within a business and commanding the transfer of large sums of money to some account for some purpose? Well, apparently that actually happened. It's called vishing, and the idea is, I guess, what happened, link in the description, archived of course. I guess what happened is that hackers, people using this software, they took voice samples of a CEO, and they managed to convince his company that it was actually him commanding the transfer of several $100,000 out of the company and to the hackers. The fact that this was able to happen, number one, shows that corporate security probably should be tightened. But number two, isn't this fucking terrifying? Especially for those of us who have more public exposure. Think of it this way. For those of us who put their voice and their image and everything out there more regularly, computers are perfectly capable of, in any technological form, replicating us pretty well. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if at some point the ability to fool around with written text also takes hold. Call it tishing or whatever. Imagine that you could replicate a person's mannerisms and style seamlessly as well, so that as long as you had access to an account that feasibly looked like theirs, you could convince anyone that they were saying anything you wanted. It's entirely possible. Combine that with video and voice, you basically can have their identity completely. The only thing you wouldn't have is access to their actual official accounts. By the way, in a preemptive sense, we should probably all make sure to tell people, anyone claiming, like for me, anyone claiming to be me is not me unless confirmed through an official channel. Preferably through multiple channels. Anyone saying weird shit that's inconsistent with my 10-year track record probably isn't me either, so keep that in mind. Apparently, I mean, it's a weird world. For a long time there, it's like in the digital era, making content stuff, you had to give like random disclaimers. Like when I talk about books from 200 years ago that deal with herbal medicine or something, I have to say, like, disclaimer, obviously, I'm not telling you these are safe. If I'm talking about weed or other drugs, other narcotics, illegal substances or less than legal, I have to say, disclaimer, I'm not encouraging the use of this substance. This is for educational purposes only. And you have to keep doing this, like with crypto. When I remark upon that, well, disclaimer, I'm not an official source of economic news. I'm not an economic advisor. I'm not your money manager. Fucking leave me alone. Now you have to, I guess, give a disclaimer. Disclaimer, yeah, this is actually me, but just because it looks and sounds exactly like me, it might not be. I mean, it's insane. And I know, unfortunately what this is likely to happen. Here's a little bit of foresight. I'll apply my future analysis to this as well. Unfortunately, this sort of identity theft, being as potentially vicious as it could be, is eventually going to convince the soccer moms of America, through corrupt politicians that'll front this idea, that we need to have like an internet ID, so to speak, like that people won't be able to anonymously post anymore. Things will be much more centralized and tied together, and the government, of course, will handle it in tandem with its big corporate partners. With Google, with Apple, and Microsoft and these groups that are probably already working with them on such things anyway. Unfortunately, this will be more anti-competition, more monopolization. It'll make things ultimately less secure. More centralized systems inevitably will be. It'll make things less safe, it'll make them less innovative, and it'll starve the internet for new material. It'll make the internet a more boring, cloying place to be, and it'll bring that era of communications to a screeching halt. What'll happen is we'll need a whole separate internet. We'll need a satellite-based, fully privatized internet that doesn't operate on any land-based systems. Or we'll need a country to go completely rogue and set up such a system on its own and buck the trend and say fuck the rest of the world. Like if Switzerland were to set up a massive server center and build its own parallel internet that's only semi-interconnected with the other one, and say, look, you can do what you want here. Now, we don't care if you post politically edgy material. Yeah, we're going to make sure we'll have our own security. It'll be fine. You'll have a patchwork maybe. You'll have a world where there'll be a dozen different internets. It'll be sort of like China's intranet. When I see that the U.S. government and the tech firms here are basically taking China's social credit score commie system and implementing aspects of it here online anyway, and saying that they want to go even further, it's basically the same fucking shit. So what, did we let the commies win? I guess that's the big problem. So now we've got vishing. You've all heard of phishing. You know, you set up a fake web page. Oh, and you can check your credit score here. Give us your credit card number. Give us your social security number, your phone number, and by the way, the names of all your kids and your dog. Basically, give us, and it's basically it was preying upon boomers for the most part. Hey, you can check your credit score. Hey, you've got free money. You've got missing divorced money in some bank account in Swaziland, but you have to put in your social security number. And this stuff actually worked, which is why it is used. Through phone lines, they do the same thing. It's like the old call used to be, it was like, whoa, we're Microsoft tech support. There's something wrong with your computer. We need you to go in and help us fix it. And of course, it's not Microsoft tech support. It's someone who's basically going to try to get you to pay them money. By the way, if you ever get targeted by them, if you pay them the money, they won't dick around on your system, but you'd be crazy to give them access in the first place. The thing is, they'll try to set it up so that they can remotely connect to your computer, and once they're in, they can go through and they can like delete shit and fuck up your system real good if you're not careful. When they called me, I just screw around with them. I found it funny. Back when I, had my cell phone on most of the time for business purposes. Really funny, but now we've got vishing, so it's even worse. Now they can make it sound like you. I wonder, can it reflect intonation as well? Like, would it not just sound like them, but it would also have the same mannerisms? Because that'd be even worse. Thankfully, like gestures and shit is a little more complex. But if you've looked at some of the deepfake video they can do, where they seamlessly overlap onto a person, somebody else's identity entirely, it's pretty goddamn uncanny. Like if you saw, what was it? Was it Rogue One? Was the Star Wars movie where they started doing that with like Tarkin and stuff? They did a good job on Tarkin. You could tell it wasn't actually him, but it was good enough so that for the purposes of the movie it was passable. Imagine 5 years from now what it'll be like. Leia, a little bit less. They didn't do quite as good a job with Leia. It didn't sync up quite as well. For some reason, it's just like the overlapped identity of Leia over whatever they were using to pose as her was shaking around a little bit, I noticed, like moving. And so you could tell it wasn't real. Like, any AI program would be able to tell the difference, I guess. It'll get to the point where that's not the case, especially in lower video formats, ones that are a little more fuzzy and granular anyway. Be different in 720 than in 4K, in other words. As far as audio quality, that would definitely play a role as well. Maybe people should start taking tape recorders. Like, I'll have a tape recorder here when I'm making the video, and then I'll rip the audio out of that so it'll be all fucked up, and then I'll put that on the video instead. That way people can only steal my cassette quality voice. It'll be really funny. I'll literally use Boomer Shoot, like from the call that talk yesterday. The idea of Boomer Shoot, you mail in your videos and they'll upload it to Boomer Shoot. By the way, it would be hilarious if such a thing actually took hold. Maybe it will. Yeah, maybe we'll have to go back to VHS quality. There is a nostalgia there. It is pretty funny. It suggested, the idea of using like shortwave and some of these lower tech, earlier wave communications. That's already taken hold. By the way, what's his name? Fucking Review Bra. He already does like shortwave broadcasting. He likes ham radio and stuff. Yeah. The way he dresses and stuff, he looks like he's, taking a time machine back to the 40s or something. So it just sort of works. That's about all. Peace out.